We've worked with engineering, we've worked with health, we're now going to work with sustainability and the environment in the university. And briefly tell you that when I moved from the Tyers Hill campus, you all know what the Tyers Hill campus was like, in 1965, out to the Bushland campus, we didn't know what hit us, what a magnificent Bushland campus it was to go to after being confined to Tyers Hill. And over time, to watch the emergence of more and more buildings and more traditional approaches to looking after the bush, turning out the lawn, bringing up the lawns and bringing up the old English traditions, and gradually the bushland losing its shape and the building being plunked. So that was the sort of development, those are natural development. And then there was a change in culture, a change in the way of looking at the landscape, a way of looking at the environment. And we gradually learned that this was the result of two particular people. Philip Pollard is about to join me here. It was the architect, the radical, the revolutionary, who took on the whole of the university administration and hundreds of years of tradition. Peter Stevens is going to follow, and Mim Woodlands is also here with us tonight. There's another one who played a role in that. Philip is going to talk about towards sustainability at the University of Newcastle. Thanks, Steve.
So we're talking about towards sustainability because I think we're still in most buildings, if not all buildings, quite a long way from anything that we could really truly call sustainable. But we're working towards it. This talk is meant to take a lot more than 12 minutes, so I'll go very quickly. I want to acknowledge the Wabakal Nation and the original owners of the land that we're on, and the land at Callahan, where the university began its current existence. We all know this very attractive image of that ship. It's coming into the harbour as a coal ship, and Newcastle is in fact the largest coal exporting port in the world. So we have a very big carbon footprint. The campus at what was called Shortland commenced in 1965. I think the building actually started in 1966 under the leadership, in planning terms, of Eric Parker, who later in his career went on to be Dean of Architecture at the university, ably assisted by Don Morris, and Don had the concept of retaining the bushland and keeping the trees quite close to the buildings, and Don actually instituted a bounty where trees were protected, and if the builders damaged them, they had a fee deducted from their income. So it actually generated some concern on behalf of the builders, and a lot of the mature trees that you see at the university are up to 200 years old. Some quite famous and noteworthy architects were involved in some of the original buildings. Glenn Murcutt being one of them, Ken Woolley, and the buildings that Woolley and Murcutt were involved in, particularly with the Shortland Union and Staff House. This is the Staff House building. Glenn Murcutt was the project architect for that. It was his first non-residential larger scale building. Okay, when I started at the university in 1990, my first task was to come up with a master plan that pulled the two amalgamated campuses together, the campus of the College of Advanced Education, as it had been previously, and the university. And those two places, even though they were cheek and jowl, they had deliberately turned their backs on each other, so there needed to be an integrated master plan to pull them together. We also got a small grant from the National Estate to remediate an area where the creeks converged on the campus that had become boggy and flooded because the local former council municipal tip had caused a land upheaval and it basically stopped the creek from flowing. And with that National Estate grant, we brought in a drag line and created quite a deep series of wetlands, and that very quickly became habitat for water birds and supplemented the Shortland wetlands, which was being constructed at about the same time. At my commencement as well, I arrived just after the Newcastle earthquake, and of course most of the buildings on campus were damaged, which meant that almost all of the campus became a building site, and the soils became compacted, even more compacted than they were previously. There's no topsoil to speak of, it's mainly clay, and you end up with something like this picture where there's the spotted gum, but almost nothing underneath it, and in wet weather it just becomes solid, very sticky clay. We implemented a system that Peter will talk about. It was devised by Mim Woodland and Peter and myself, and we came up with the title of Landsoft to describe this system of catchment management and remnant bushland management that can be applied to virtually any landscaped or even agricultural areas. And that's that same area, not terribly long after having the plot going. I'll let Peter elaborate on that. In terms of buildings, this building was commenced construction soon after I arrived as well. It was designed by Michael Wilford, the well-known international British architect, former partner of James Sterling, and it was documented by Suitors Architects locally. The building was constructed with a grant from the state government, and it was very successful in social terms. The big awning acts like a big umbrella, and it's a great gathering place for students. It doesn't work terribly well thermally, and that was gave us something in the direction to go. About the same time, a postgrad researcher by the name of Kate Flint did her honours thesis on looking at the ecological footprint of the university, and which looks at the area that's needed to support the organisation. And it came up with some very interesting findings, and it confirmed some of the assumptions that we made, pattern tested. And they are that 90% of the impact of the university is from energy. And half of that, roughly, 47% comes from energy expended in transport, and roughly the other half, 46%, comes from buildings, operational energy in buildings. So we knew while we were looking at waste, while we were looking at other environmental impacts, the really big one was energy. And we started really drilling down and getting a lot of information on the consumption of energy and water. And this graph tells you a bit of a story about what was going on. From 94 to 2004, you see fairly significant increase in student numbers. They're equivalent full-time student numbers at Callaghan campus. So it goes from just over 10,000 to just under 15,000. So a fairly significant increase in student numbers. The red is gross floor area, and you can see we were busy building new buildings. It went from about 16,000, 16, anyway. It increased by about a third, so a fairly significant increase there. Other interesting ones, the aqua coloured one is energy cost, and you can see it did a big dip when the electrical industry, the generation industry was deregulated and prices dipped temporarily. And you can see also, the water, which is the pinky colour, we actually got some pretty good declines in consumption. So the interesting thing about this is while the area of new buildings was going up, the number of students was going up quite significantly. We're actually getting reductions in water consumption, and we're getting reductions in energy consumption and CO2 emissions. And the way we're doing that was through buildings like the design building. This is stuff we need. EJE did this one in about 93, 94, very economical building. And we started measuring how much CO2 per square metre per year these buildings emitted. And that was on the basis of the metering, and we put in a series of quite sophisticated metering and building management systems that all talk to a central computerised building management system that managed all of the major buildings on the campus. So 55 kilograms per square metre per year is quite low. The range that you would look at for typical campus buildings are between about 150 kilograms per square metre for a fairly basic teaching building, up to in excess of 250 for laboratories, up to 300 kilograms for sophisticated laboratories. The design studios of architecture by James Gross, very economical building, won the Sulman Award. Very simple, doesn't work perfectly, but very economical in terms of its carbon footprint. GP building by Suitors Architects. This building achieves 35 kilograms per square metre per year. Very, very low, less than a third of the conventional building. See, Brandy's already getting moving on. Nursing, Peter Stutchbury with EJE. Very innovative in terms of, this is the first building that we really started modelling in a sophisticated way. So looking at how the building would perform thermally in terms of ventilation and light, and how much energy it would consume. So a model was built to predict all of that in the planning stages of the building. So, and the top image on the right, you can see, is actually the light study for that building. The bottom image underneath it is the actual corridor. On the left is the first geothermal field to generate air conditioning in Australia, large scale. Quite an innovative system through 48 wells, 100 metres deep, and we recover all year round. We recover 19-degree water. So in winter we use that to supplement heating. In summer we use it for cooling. And that building is 39 kilograms per square metre per year. University House, the old Nesca house, when we bought it from Nesca Supply Authority, it was using $20,000 worth of electricity a month. A huge amount of electricity. After two major extensions and refurb, it was 104 kilograms per square metre, which is about half of a typical building of that type. Residential building, Barrahina Barn, fairly high level, probably 30 kilograms less than what you might predict, but not as efficient as some of the others. And the reason for that is that students use a huge amount of hot water in the shower. And we fought to have a time limit so that after 8 minutes or after however many minutes the water went cold, and the warden at the time, who Bernie will remember, Dr. Blackmore, refused to let us do that. So students could stay in the showers, have hot water as long as they like. Engineering F, efficient little extension there. This building was interesting. It's the former gym, the current building. It was an adaptive reuse from gym to the main student interface in terms of student support, student enrolment, that sort of function. And this, we used a system that was mainly naturally ventilated, but again, the building management system would kick in when it got outside the comfort parameters that were set in the system. You can set those as you will. And when that happened, the louvers in the building shut down. The telltale light came on to tell people that full air conditioning was in operation. But again, extremely efficient, about 88 kilograms per square metre, as opposed to about 250. Life Sciences, building very familiar with Brian Suitors, won the Sulman Award. It's a research building, high-end biotech research, PC2 and PC3 labs, and it achieves 150 kilograms per square metre, which is probably 2/3 of what we expect. ICT building, most recent, again, similar sorts of levels of energy efficiency and reduction of carbon emissions. I won't go into those graphs, but they tell a story much the same, that in spite of quite significant growth, we were able to hold energy levels to a small decline, water levels to a significant decline, and also keep a handle on costs. That's just a summary of those figures that we saw. And the last building is Birrabarn Indigenous Centre, which is the building that probably I'm most proud of and was most satisfying in terms of working on it. It's another one that we ran an architectural design competition for, worked closely with the Indigenous staff of Birrabarn and some students, and was a very productive and exciting project to work on. Peter Stutchbury, top right, one of the staff. Pond system as part of the wetlands, the land salt system, building interior, exterior. And part of the brief was a building that communicated between inside and out, so that it could be completely opened up and blurred the definition between interior and exterior. It's a fantastic space in the big room. An art floor and collaboration is a key component.
Thank you very much.